everybody. We're starting the panel, our first panel of the week. And I want to thank everybody for being a part of the festival. And our panel today will be how to break in Hollywood. And I have John, Amy, and Costas, two actors and one actress agent. And so I will start asking some questions I'll start with John, and then in the end of the seminar, there's a tool on the bottom of the screen that you guys can type your questions, and then I'll ask them to our panelists. So I'll start with John. John, how did you get in the business? Where did you begin? And what was your initial training?
I started in Atlanta, Georgia, because I came from the South. I could have come to New York or LA, but I knew there was an opportunity to learn what I didn't know and pick up enough credit or possibly my union cards to then come to New York or LA. And I started off as a writer. I studied writing in college, creative writing, screenwriting, advertising writing. I thought that was the direction I was going to go in. And my only acting experience early on was goofing around with improv groups in college. And soon after I actually got into the line of writing ads for people, I suddenly found out I wanted to be on the other side. And so my whole, creative writing training, it served me well because I'm also a produced screenwriter and continue to write, and a produced playwright. So that part served me well. But once I got in front of the camera, not really knowing what to do, and went to Atlanta and studied hard with whoever was there, booked a lot of stuff, be it stage, the commercial, voiceover, film, TV, and learned enough to be invited by the networks to come out to New York and LA and jump in, and I did. And I've been working steadily ever since. But I teach a lot now, and I have young kids at the age of 8, 9, 10 who know exactly what they want to do. And I envy that because I was in my mid-20s before I made the switch from a guy that thought he would just write only to being on the other side. And I'm glad I made the change. And so I kind of an odd start. I was not the kid that went to theater school. Right. And it worked out fine. It took a little while. I got out here at 29. A lot of kids are out here, and it worked out fine. That may be different today, but I walked into Hollywood at the age of 29 with a few credits behind me, and was actually offered a pilot right off the bat, and it worked out well. And so here I am 36 years later, still hanging out here.
Awesome. So Amy, this is a 3-part question again. It'll be the same question. How did you get in the business? Where did you begin? And what was your initial training?
Me? Okay. So I'm from New York, and I started, in high school, always going into the city, auditioning for shows. And then I wound up working at a talent agency in New York when I was around 20. So I was starting to learn the business from a different angle. And right around that time, I wound up getting cast in my first off-Broadway show, which was Tony and Tina's Wedding, which was a really big deal for 21 years. And then Tony and Tina's I was still acting, so Tony and Tina's became a pilot, which brought me out to LA. And I was working at an agency here in LA, which I didn't know John then, but we kind of were at the same places in the same time. And I wrote 2 shows that landed back in New York. So that's where my whole bi-coastal relationship started happening. And I made my living off of those shows for a while, and then came back to LA, and I went into agenting again, and then management, and back to agenting. And now I'm partner over at Eris.
Great. Costas, how did you get in the business? Where did you begin, and what was your initial training?
Well, I have to say this. I have a great admiration for both people that just spoke, because when I began, I just wanted to be a gun for hire, and I was happy to be able to walk into a room and maybe get seen. But John's story about being a writer first, I think that's such a gift of natural progressive of his life, because he a lot of people become actors and then they become writers and they learn and you started, Amy, a different way and then you went this way and that way. And what's happening now is a lot of people that have, you know, kind of grown fast because the business did change, because there used to be writers, actors, producers, and that stuff. People like Warren Beatty was one of the guys. There's many other people now that have taken control of their own destiny. John Cassavetes was one of the greats. You know, he wrote, directed, and he could act. You know, who knew what he did first? But I just think it's wonderful to have whatever you have in your life. Gerard Butler was training to be a lawyer, which means he's smart, he's clever, he gets things, and then he became an actor. And I'm sure that's not the only, there's sports people that have started as sports people that became actors because they had a discipline. I just think it's wonderful how you can come from anywhere and then be on the screen or put people on the screen or give opportunities for people to be on the screen like you, Amy. And I sometimes I just say, you know, you just don't know how it's going to happen. But I have great admiration for how you guys began and where you've gone to, you know what I'm saying? And I personally began because I watched Kirk Douglas and Burt Lancaster and Anthony Quinn in movies and went, oh my God, like everybody else, they had their favorites, you know, film noir, Spartacus, etc., The Godfather. And I'm like, how do you do that? Well, we had no chance. When I was growing up in Australia, Hollywood was a million miles away. And there was no Mel Gibson when I was a kid. There was a guy called Michael Pate who did some American movies. I don't know if you guys remember him, but he's a dude that did a TV series in Australia and he made it in America. He did some stuff across the seas. And as time progressed, the Mel Gibsons and all different kind of people came along. And I guess in the late 80s, I found an acting class and I just started studying and I went, wow, I'm in the room with actors that have actually been on the screen. And I ended up loving it because I didn't like school too much. I was a bit of a jock, but when I went to acting classes, it was about human behavior and interaction. And I kind of grew up a little bit with that street thing. And, you know, I had the Greek background. The uncles had nightclubs and things like that. And I thought, oh, I understand things. And that's how I fell into it and got lucky, met some people and met David Kelly and started with Picket Fences as a legitimate TV show, but there was other movies in between. And that's how I began. Sorry if that was a little long, but I'm kind of remembering so many things with you guys saying how you started, you know?
Great stuff.
It's interesting listening to Costas' story as well. I actually began teaching about 6 years ago, and a group from Australia reached out to me, and I've got these young Aussie kids, and it's amazing how badly they want to get to America. And every single one of them from the age of 8, 9, 10, or 11, the first question is, how's my American accent? How's my American accent? And they work really hard on it. And I keep thinking, man, you guys are great. There's a certain style they bring to it, and it's very entertaining. At first, when I was asked, I thought, well, the kids that come out of New Zealand and Australia are so skilled. I said, maybe they should be teaching me. And they said, no. Surprisingly, there's not a great infrastructure of training facilities in Australia, which caught me by surprise, to be honest with you. I hadn't heard that. So I've been with these kids now for almost a year, between the ages of like 7 and 20. And it's very rewarding just to sit down with them. And I'll get in the middle of the scene and I'll completely forget that these are not American kids and they work so hard on their craft and the accent and everything. And it's a real treat for me at this level now, having been in the business for a while, to teach and watch their progress.
Great. So now the question back to, I'll go to Amy now. Amy, what's your advice for actors or writers starting out now?
What is my advice for actors who are writers?
Actors and or writers who are starting out now.
I can speak to both because we have a very strong literary department that I'm very involved in, and obviously I'm a theatrical agent. The actors, my first thing is, if you're presenting yourself to an agent, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. If you are presenting yourself to an agent, don't do it unless you have all of your tools in order. You know, I'm speaking on the level of somebody really first breaking in. You know, your headshots should look like you and not like you when you were in second grade. You, you laugh, but you know what? I
Right.
get them.
We all
Um,
do.
your your resume should not be, you know, your elementary school play. Training is very important. Don't lie. It's too small of a community. Don't, you know,
Yes.
don't and have your reels, you know, have something, have in your back pocket a monologue, you know, a heavy dramatic or a comedic. If you're a Broadway person and you say you sing, you know, have an upbeat tempo ready. Have all your tools in place. And please don't come in saying, just get me in the room. I'm going to book it. I'm the one. You know, a little humility. Humbleness goes a long way. As far as writing, you know, listen, it's a craft, right? And just keep writing, and relationships are so important. You know, as our literary department is growing, I find myself reaching back to people that I used to speak to about 20 years ago who have gone from producing stage productions and now into film, and you know, so it's a lot about relationships and just keep honing in on that craft.
Same question to you, John. What's your advice for actors and the writers starting out?
You know, it's a little different world than it was when I came out here back in the 80s. There's a lot of kids that are being picked up now because of that other skills that I don't quite understand the whole YouTube influencer thing in the world, but clearly it's part of. So if we're just talking about you know, the acting, you know, there's a lot more to it than I think you know, people think. I remember when I was a little nervous because I was coming from the writing background, so I studied as much as I could. I even had my own comedy group, and I came from comedy, which is how I got to LA. Network people saw me doing stage comedy, and then I got sort of fearful when I came out here because I didn't have a lot of the dramatic skills. So I made sure I studied with people who were really good in certain areas, and worked with actors who I kind of revered, who I was lucky enough to be with in class and pick up every single thing I could, because you know they depend on you when you're in the room to bring the goods. And so being well trained, whether it's really knowing what you're saying or what your relationships are, or just the confidence you have walking in the room. I know when you walk on a big set, Costas has been there as well. In fact, we may have been on picket fences together. I can't remember. I have to go back and look. But you have 300 or 400 people that are dependent upon you doing the right thing. Whether you're a series regular or whether you're someone who's coming in for a small arc and a couple of guest shots. And so you got to bring the goods. I mean, you slow things down, you don't know what you're doing, and suddenly there's 300 people staring at you, and money, you know, the clock is constantly going. And so, you know, there's a lot at stake, a lot of jobs depending upon everybody doing the right thing. So it's you know, be so well prepared, understand what's required of you, know the difference between stage and the technical chaos of working on a film set where maybe you're not even staring at the person you're talking to, you're looking at a piece of tape on a camera because the room is too small to bring your other the person to whom you're speaking even within your eyesight. So there's all kinds of training that you want to do to make sure that you could deliver the goods, just like the stunt guy, just like the lighting guy, just like the DP. They all bring a certain talent, and you've got to do the same. And what helps that is just the confidence that comes from just training and constantly doing it and understanding what's required of you. And on the writing side, you know, I'll tell you what, I wrote a play that the night I opened the play, I was trying to draw attention to myself as an actor. So it was a solo show. Those were popular back in the day. Costas, maybe you remember Chaz Palminteri with The Bronx Tale, or Eric Bogosian doing sex, drugs, and rock and roll. We were all doing Spalding Gray doing Swimming with I mean, we were all doing these solo shows. and the studios were buying them. This is around 1991 or two. And so Sony Pictures snapped mine up the night I opened it, and I sat in there the next day and they said, we want you to write the screenplay. And I didn't have the nerve to say, I have yet to write a screenplay. I've written a ton of commercials. I've written a lot of stage comedy. So I'll be honest with you, I went out, bought some of the best books I could find just on structure, knowing that I knew how to write pathos and comedy. I knew the structure of how to bounce that back and forth, but I didn't know screenplay structure. And there's some great books out there that teach you basic, but it always comes down to story. And nowadays, while maybe a lot of young writers might relent the fact that everything is a Marvel comic, well, that's not true. My own sons, who are both gifted actors who've had careers as actors, are playing around with their own small features right now, looking for an audience. And I think you should never worry about, can I write a Marvel comic? Can I write to that? If you're someone that can write story and has a story to tell, you'll find it. You don't want to write something that doesn't make any sense to you in hopes to, to please the powers. Just write. And I find that actors, I tell a lot of actors in my class, write your own scenes. I think actors may have a better ear for dialogue than maybe non-actors, because so much different dialogue is thrown at them in so many different capacities. So, and I love, and writing, guys, is a very, very different discipline. Acting, unless you're doing a solo show like I did, is a very collaborative. But writing, if you choose to do it on your own, you're sitting on a desk, hopefully staring out a window and writing 5, 6, 7 pages a day. So there's a whole different discipline. But for me, a guy who's been an actor for many years and a writer, the greatest joy I had was hearing actors on set deliver lines that I wrote rather than me delivering someone else's line. So it was very gratifying, very gratifying. And I'm still doing it, still trying to sell writing.
Good, John. Costas, your turn, brother. What's your advice?
I mean, the courage it takes to be forced to write something when you don't know, so it's incredible. Look, where do I begin? Where do you want me to take this question? Because they've covered it so beautifully. What would you like?
What's your advice for young actors? They're starting their career. Like what would you do if you had to start again, Costas? What would be the knowing all what you know now?
You know what? There's so many two-sided coins in this. I'll just try something different. For instance, I'd say, listen. One of the great things that I learned at the beginning was when you read something, you better understand what it's trying to tell you. You have to understand the material. So in essence, you've got to be disciplined. And, slowly, the more you read, you learn more, and you start to understand material. So be disciplined. But then there's other people that are kind of off the cuff, play like soccer players, or boxers. They go by instinct, and they've done pretty well too. Ultimately, you have to understand what you're reading and try and be as fearless as you can. And I think some kids are fearless. Kids are usually fearless, and some people are not fearless. And when they get over their fears, they're fantastic. And I've heard stories of De Niro and all these guys going into a room and being nervous. And I've done that. I've been nervous in rooms for about 20 years. But when I'm on the set, I was never really nervous other than breaking the ice with whoever I have to work with. So, I think understanding what you're doing, loving what you're doing, and learning to be fearless, to take chances like the great Brandos and all these other people did, and all these new, you do things and you swap things around and you talk to the writers and you ask questions, and all of a sudden you find magic. And I just feel like enjoying what you do and enjoying the challenge is one of the greatest things, because otherwise you're always trying to fit into a box. And when I did that, I walked into rooms for jobs that I didn't want to get, but I tried so hard to please everybody. I walked out going, that was terrible. What the hell was I doing? And I walked in when I didn't care. I had an argument with my mother and my brother once, and I walked in to read for a film with, what was the director's name that directed 48 Hours? Great director. I can't remember his name now. Is Walter Hill.
Yeah.
I had an argument with my mother and my brother before I went in there, and I hadn't seen them for 10 years. And I went in there I didn't care. I had done my homework, but I didn't care. And it was one of the greatest things I've ever experienced in a room with a director. So I don't know what the magic is, but you've got to love what you do. If you want to be a star, be a star. But if you want to be good, you'll end up being a star. Then you're going to deal with the rest. And talking to good people, people that are knowledgeable, asking questions, taking chances in class and things like that. I think that's part of the magic of being an actor. As far as being a writer, you've got to be recommended what to read, meaning, I'm going to ask you, Mr. Posey, I'm going to start jotting down a little bit, trying to write, because I would never call myself a writer, but there are certain structural things you can get knowledge from. Other than that, watch great movies and see what they do and what they say and what it means. And I remember seeing a movie called The Professionals, and any young actor that's into action movies, this was an action movie from '66. And it was Richard Brooks who won Best Adapted Screenplay with Burt Lancaster and Lee Marvin and Woody Strode and Claudia Cardinale and and Jack Palance. And this movie's like missing, but when you watch it, you see every line in the movie had an essence to it that was like worth a monologue. And that's where I learned to trim dialogue, or how to shape dialogue, or what are you really saying. So just keep the knowledge going, I think, is the ultimate message.
Frederico, I don't know, back in the day, the great films that Costas is referring, you can actually read those right now. You can almost find a screenplay anywhere, and there may not be better training, especially if you've seen the film, to go back and read it as if you haven't, and then go watch it again. And you see how most of it will be in place. Yeah, there's always going to be actors that somehow trimmed or moved or cut, but you look at the original screenplays and it's fascinating education. I also wanted to say one more thing. If there's writers here who might wonder, what do you do to get started? First film I ever sold, other than optioning this play that I did, I wrote it as a spec script. I had an idea that came into my head one night. I was maybe 30. I was in New York. I was studying. I decided to sit down and write this idea and flesh it out. I wasn't sure where it was going. When I got done with it, I still wasn't sure what I had. I shopped it around, was able to find an agent from it, and it made what's called the Blacklist, which is a Hollywood list of the best unproduced screenplays floating around town, which was news to me. I had no idea. And from that, it sold a couple of times. And then the ugly part happened, where people would hang on to it for a year and do nothing. A director would come and a director would leave. And I thought, this is 5 years of this and still nothing's been made. But it got me in the room. People knew who I was as a writer. They'd say, hey, I love your voice. This is original. I don't know if we can make it, but I wanted to know you. And it all came from just an idea and having structure books in front of me to help me through it. Rewrite again. And suddenly I had a piece that people were interested in. That film was eventually made with the likes of Patty Clarkson and Danny Glover and people like that. And it was thrilling, but it just started out with an idea and me thinking, why not sit down and write it? I think I have a good ear for writing. I think I got a good story. It was a family relationship story in that sort of Hoosiers, Rudy, Stand By Me kind of vein. And it felt good to me, and it got me in the door and got me a number of other writing gigs that I didn't expect to happen. And that's sort of what you have to do. You don't walk into town and people say, I'm going to pay you to write. You end up writing the spec, or you get into the studio classes where they say, do you want to be a TV writer? There are all kinds of workshops that the studios put on to get you in that world of writing for TV, which I did very little of. I was mostly focused on just trying to sell screenplays, and I was able to. And it got me gigs at studios just based on an idea I had one day. I sat down in New York, and over a period of 6 months, I wrote it, and I'm still writing that. So, you got an idea, sit down and write it, see what happens. It's a great calling card, by the way, is to show a script. If it's worthy, it'll find it. It'll find a buyer. It'll find an agent.
Great stuff, John. And then there is a question actually that one of our viewers sent to me here. It's, what about for international actor? Like, any special advice?
Amy might be able to speak
Yeah,
to
I
that
can.
just because she's got kids and adults all over, coming from all over the place.
So, yeah, I just want to, I see, are we supposed to answer these questions that are popping up?
No,
Oh,
they're supposed to be in the end.
oh,
But since the same question, I figured I'd get that out of the way now.
yeah, that was good.
Thanks, baby.
International. So sometimes I get people who come from outside of the States. I mean, my whole thing is there are certain studios that only want like an O1 visa. Like, just make sure all of your paperwork is in order and that you can work in the States. We have affiliate offices in London and in Mexico, so we can kind of pull strings that way.
Mhm.
But, you know, if you're good and you're dedicated to your craft, just keep doing it. Sometimes the shows overseas don't translate, the credits don't translate. I mean, a knowledgeable casting director will notice the credits and know them. Um, so somebody who's like, I have a few people who are these big A-listers in the Latin world, and we're trying to kind of get them into the States. So that's taken a little bit of time, but it's all doable. And just to kind of piggyback on what John was saying about writing and just keep writing and writing, you know, and I just know this because this is in my lit world, I have some amazing scripts, and some even with great talent attached. And then I'll call a production company or I'll call a studio, and that's not what their mandates are. That's not what they're looking for. So that doesn't mean necessarily that your script is not okay. It just means that that's not what they're looking for at the time. But again, like John said, just to keep writing and creating, because you never know.
Right. So, John, what's your advice on training as an actor?
Well, I think it's like, I as Costas said, I come from an athletic background. I once won a TV series in a one of those network tests, which are terrifying. I'm sure Costas has done it. It's like your ninth audition, and you're finally in front of 50 people who all have suits on, and they're staring at you. And the director told me after I booked it, he said, "You nailed that like an athlete, going at like you were in a boxing ring with another boxer." And I said, "Well, maybe that's my athletic background, but certainly the training and the work ethic. There is a great, for you guys that are listening, I advise you all to, if you can go to YouTube and find Jeff Daniels talking about the great monologue he did in news in the, what's it called, Amy? What's the thing that Aaron Sorkin did? Newsroom. There was a monologue. HBO was not sure they were going to pick that show up. And there was a monologue that Aaron Sorkin wrote that may be the greatest monologue ever written, ever. And Jeff Daniels had to nail it. And he talks about, there's an interview, he's talking to somebody, how he had to own that or it was not going to work. And Sorkin said, as much as you depend on this, I depend on it even more. So there was a ton of pressure. It was a very politically charged monologue about the fact that America is no longer the greatest country in the world, for anybody who remembers seeing that. But you can find him talking about it. And his training is all he talks about. The fact that he owned it backwards and forwards. There was no getting caught in the middle, wondering where you were, wondering why you were saying what you were saying and to who. He had this thing, it's the training. Jeff Daniels is a wonderfully trained actor who can do anything, obviously, because he did Dumb and Dumber and he also did To Kill a Mockingbird on Broadway. You've got to train for the Academy Award-winning stuff, and you have Dumb and Dumber. That's Jeff Daniels. But if you watch as an actor who knows what it's like to know, I better know my stuff backward and forward, or I'm going to make an idiot of myself. And and I tell my actors, the more you know what you're going in, the more you've ripped the scene apart and you know what it's all about and what you're going to say and how and why. There's always going to be a director that might come in and throw something at you at the last minute. But if you know what you're saying and why you're saying, you'll get past that. So you just keep doing. I sometimes tell actors to avoid these acting coaches who say, kiss my ring and kneel at my feet because I'm a guru. I hate that stuff. And they're out there. And I don't know that an actor has to be tortured to be able to learn how to break down the scene and understand emotion and stuff like that. There's other ways to approach it. I tend to, as an acting coach, tell them what really worked well and how do we work on the other rather than tell them what sucked, and I've seen both. And so, but great training, it gives the confidence in the room that where you know that you've got the goods and you know how you're going to deliver this. And even if a director, I got to tell you what, guys, and Costas can say the same thing. I would rather walk in a room, and I've done this before. I've given the most bizarre take on something. The director would look at me and go, well, I never had that take in mind, but that was fantastic. Thank you. That doesn't mean I booked it, but it means I walked in with something completely unpredictable that nobody else did. And even if you're off, way off on what he was thinking, they can't help but go, that was interesting. Okay, so if you have the belief and the confidence, which comes from breaking down and knowing what you're doing, go in there and be that original guy and try not to be the same guy that just walked in the room before you and the same guy after you. Find something different about it. And most time, I think you'll find people will appreciate what you brought into the room.
Great stuff. What about you, Costas?
I'm just thinking I'm a little smarter than I think I am normally, because when he said about the Dumb and Dumber after that huge monologue and how he nailed it with a great writer, I'm like, I was thinking exactly the same thing. I'm like, you got to be able to pull that shit off to be able to pull that off. And Mr. Posey said what I was thinking, so I feel like I know something. That made me laugh.
What's your advice on training?
I just enjoyed that moment so much because you said it flat out, and I was too scared to say it. What should I deal with, Frederico? Which question should I deal with? Every time these two people speak, I've got nothing to say. Say,
what's your advice on training?
Training?
Yeah.
As far as acting?
Acting, yes.
Oh man. Well, I think it all depends. Look, it's just funny because after all these years, I depended on acting coaches so much. Like every word I'd say, like, is that any good in my head? And I'm like, you can't get any flow thinking that. First of all, kids, they read it, and kids are natural, right? That's why they're so fantastic. That's why they stand up to all these accomplished actors when they're good and have good directors. They're like magical because they're instinctual and they trust themselves. So training is good. So you find a way to work, but bringing life to your work is great, whether you're 17, 24, you grew up in the streets, or you know, Gerard Butler, I went to, attorney school, law school. I just feel like bringing whatever you have, and whoever's giving you your knowledge or your, how do you say it? It's like you said, teachers, sometimes teachers they're not good teachers. But if you have people that are giving you decent advice, use it, and then bring whatever you have, your instincts, and just trust yourself. And again, back to being fearless and taking a chance. Like Mr. Posey said, it's like, yeah, that was interesting. Well, guess what? I wasn't interesting when I held myself back. And now I do anything with anybody. I've worked with some pretty wonderful, Sir Anthony Hopkins and this one and that one. And they love me because I'm like just going along with the flow. But going into a room with people that are staring at you, you kind of hold yourself back. Don't do that. Get in there. Don't go crazy, but don't be afraid to try something. Would you like me to try it another way? There were times when I didn't do that. Now it's like, I'm 56 years old. I don't care anymore. Meaning I care about the work, but I don't care about what anybody thinks. So that leads you to be more risk-taking and more fearless. So, but do your homework, be disciplined. I will say this, don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Like, don't show up and phone it in. There are certain scenes on certain TV shows you can go in because it's just this and that, but try not to be lazy. Make the most of it. It's funny. I last night I saw a testimonial to James Gandolfini, who I got to spend about, let's say, in 25 years, about 13 times with. Some at a bar, some at a restaurant, some on the street, just talking about life. And they did a testimonial to him. I'd never seen it, but when you see The Sopranos, it was one of the great shows and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it kind of looks effortless because you just want to go ride the wave that they're, but it showed a little bit of behind the scenes, and he would not just walk through it. It's not working. You see little bits and pieces. So you've got to care about what's going on and make sure whatever you leave on the, you know, on film is good for the audience and good. So you can go home and have a glass of wine, walk your dog, and have a toasted sandwich or have a hot chocolate and feel good about yourself. So don't be lazy. Don't compromise if you can help it. You know what I mean? That's a really good thing, I think, for longevity's sake.
Gotcha.
Right on. Yeah.
Amy, do you think it's easier for an actor to break into film or television?
I think that it's not an either or. I think it's all inclusive. It's not an either or. It's just really being present, you know, and the fearless thing is really when you're in the room. Because, you know, I can call back, not always to get feedback, you know, and it's really important to do the work. You know, don't wing it. Don't get sides and don't and become and go in unprepared. You know, that's the job of the actor. But I think it's not an either or. You just go and go full force and don't get out of line. That's like my big thing. You know, stay there. It takes time. It's a marathon, not a sprint kind of thing.
Hmm? Good
So
stuff. What about you, John? Do you think it's TV any easier than film, or?
You know, sometimes I think it may just be the actor who comes to town. There might be something about him that just attracts people who are looking for him, film or TV. I remember when I came in, I wasn't sure where I was going to land, and I kept sort of shifting to TV. And then found agents who were busier in TV than film, and I kind of fell into a guy that does TV and then miniseries, the occasional smaller film. But I've had a great opportunity to work with great actors who've done a ton of film work, the Tom Hankses of the world and people like them. But I think it kind of boils down to sort of who you are and what's needed. And then, you know, there's always a young actor that comes out of nowhere and you go, wow, this kid, guy or girl, they burst onto the scene and they're phenomenal. Sometimes it could be luck, being in the right place at the right time with the right, with the right relationships can go a long way. But I don't know that there's really an answer to that. You just come out here, and some of the same casting directors, I think Amy could tell you, are doing both TV and film right now. And you might run into them for one. I know there's a number of casting directors that continue to see me for both. And so you just have relationships with them. And I think they've sort of crossed into different lines of doing both TV and film. But it is funny sometimes how you sort of find yourself in one world. And I learned over the years that I was going to end up mostly doing TV. And of course, over the years, like the Sopranos, TV got better than some of the film that's out there. Some of the best work going on in the world right now is coming from streaming television. So I don't know that there's that much of a distinction anymore, to be honest with
you. Yeah.
Gotcha. What about you, Costas? Do you think TV is easier than film to break in, or it's about the same?
You know, when I first came to America, which was around about the 88, the stigma was, you don't want to do TV if you want to be a movie star, right? This was the little bits and pieces I heard. Even though Steve McQueen and Jack Nicholson and all kinds of people did TV shows when they began. But at this stage of the game, quality is quality. And the world is open up with Netflix and all these shows. I mean, from Lilyhammer, a show that Stephen Van Zandt, who was not an actor, but was bit playing in The Sopranos, he found wonderful actors in Europe, in Norway. I couldn't turn it off. It was just well done. Things that are well done are well done. And the budgets and all that kind of stuff with these big channels, I guess I'll call them channels, they're wonderful, and you can watch them when you want. You can follow them when you want. It may not be the best for NBC, CBS, but they're still doing fine. I think quality is quality. And you can have somebody like Don. I worked with Don Cheadle on Picket Fences for a year and a half, 2 years. And he, at some point, he wanted to continue, but he got an offer to do this little part supporting Denzel Washington playing the character of Mouse. And the next thing you know, he's nominated for Academy Award. You know, I don't know how it works. I don't know. Who knows? I've read pilots. I'm like, oh my God, I'd die to be in this. I'll do whatever I can and perform. And it goes nowhere. Then it's a pilot. I've read a couple of pilots where I went, oh man, okay, that's interesting. I'll let it go. And I'm being nice about it. I'm like, what the hell is that? I remember when Walking Dead first came out. I'm like, who wants to do a zombie show? Well, guess what? Everybody that did's just fine. So you just don't know. But quality is quality. And if it finds you, you sail on and do great. I mean, and also early fame can be a little bit of a fluke, and be careful of that, because I heard a great guy say something once, a boxing trainer. I'll tell you his name if you want to know, but he said, wherever you go, whatever time it is, wherever you are in the world, morning, noon, or night, the truth will find you. So if you get lucky on your first film because it was a great script, and you had a great director, and you looked right, and you don't train to sustain a career, you'll be found out, and then the career may go somewhere else. So, you know, chasing quality and watching quality and doing your best is a pretty good objective.
And Frederico, you never can tell where those things will play out. My son was 18 and he'd been done well as a young actor, and a couple of things came his way that didn't happen, and they turned out to be enormous projects where he was in the running, huge, big films, and he didn't get it. And a smaller one came along, and he seemed to love it, and it was a small little thing that MTV was doing, and I think his agents were trying to talk him out of it because it didn't feel like there was anything there. And that show turned out to be Teen Wolf, that was a global hit all over the world for 6 years. And he said it's the most fun thing he ever did. And the people that were behind that show, Russell Mulcahy, Costas, who's from, your part of the
Sure. He was my neighbor, by the way.
Russell directed almost every episode, so it had quality. This was it was a very ambitious show with no budget that looked fantastic. And the guy behind it created Criminal Minds, and so they had some great people on board that you may not have recognized right off the bat. And I thought, oh gosh, it's MTV, it's their first shot with a dramatic so and so, maybe not. And I really believe the reps were going, I think we can do better. But he said, no, this speaks to me. And 6 years later, and now the show's back on. Hulu just relaunched it. So you never quite know what's out there and what's going to happen. But if something speaks to you, and you have the courage to sort of stick with it. And he was a great ambassador for the program. And he just stuck with it and put in 100 episodes of something that he'll have for the rest of his life.
Wow.
Nobody knew it at the time. I mean, small network, we're not talking network, we're talking cable, who had never, ever created dramatic television. It was known for its music. Or what an odd choice for a TV show of that level. And it went on to do big numbers. So
that was a timing thing too, wasn't it? That was when UPN and all that stuff started to change. Yeah, I got Russell. I should have invited Russell for tea more often when I lived next door to him. But I will credit him with discovering your son in a way when I see him next time.
Yeah, what a lovely guy. And I had the great opportunity, probably because my son, to shoot half a dozen episodes, and Russell was always behind the camera. Just a lovely human being, and he did wonderful things with this show, considering that just
meeting good people in this business is a good thing, right, Amy?
Yeah,
being respectful, having a laugh. Yeah,
keep those relationships going.
Yeah, not with an agenda, just because you like people. That works out to be great. Look, I think of Robert Zemeckis and Tom Hanks. I got to work with them on Beowulf. I think about Oliver Stone and all the people he worked with. There's just different. David Kelly has brought back many people in his TV world. It's just working with great people, and some are older and they leave us. But when you're having fun with people and you respect and you enjoy what you're doing, things just keep rolling along, and you just, it's a gracious life.
I always get feedback sometimes, like after a project's booked and we're closed, and then sometimes people get called back, just like you said. And something I love to hear is, this person was a joy on set. Everybody loved him, or everyone loved her, or they, whatever you are. But everybody loved that person. Um, and so that's another thing, set behavior for the people who are, it's true, like for the people who are just beginning, you know, and little bit things. All right, I'll let you guys go on with the questions, but just why, you don't never want to go into an agent's office gossiping about another agent that you had. It's again too small of a circle. I see that a lot. Well, that agent didn't get me out, or that,
She's here now. Guess what?
yeah, here she is. um, so yeah, and
Trying to
you
find a light.
just want to.
Costas talks about David Kelly. I've had the chance to work on, let's see, Chicago Hold, Boston Legal, and then out of the blue, about 6 years ago, I got a call that they wanted me to come on and shoot How to Get Away with Murder. Now, typically at that level, so, you go in and you read because it was someone that was a regular, and they said just come in. And I thought, well, how did they come to me? And Costas, it was Bill D'Elia, who'd been with David Kelly forever. And he said, hey, I produced you here, I produced you here, I produced you here, and I directed you here, and I thought you're right. And so what Amy says is right. You make an impression, you do something the right way, and they go, who was that guy in Boston Legal who played this judge? I find him, I want to put him in. That's what happened. I walked in the show, and there I was without having to go through the whole process. So do good work on the set. Make sure you come in and do what you're hired to do, and then not create problems. And they remember versus this guy, where this guy was a pain in the ass. This guy did the thing, but he was a pleasure to work with. And so there you go.
You got to be a human being. Yeah, be a human being about it. Amy, you really hit it on the head. This is something important. I have been around long enough to say I've seen some people that are like dying to be on this show or in this movie. And I've been with them when they've been on the show or in the movie that I was dying to be in too. And then all of a sudden, people are like, what time do we go home? Like, almost like it's time to bitch. It's like, you know what? You wanted to be on here. This is going to lead you to a better career, a fresher life. Of what, a lot of magic happens out of these movies and shows, and you can take care of your family and all that stuff. But I'm just saying that don't get to the point where you sour the fact that people want to even think about you, even especially when you have talent and you're good. It's like life's too short, and movies and making TV shows is too much fun.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you did bring that up, because people forget.
Yeah, they do.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, guys.
Lots of people will get into a TV series, and after 9 or 10 episodes, they go, man, I need to move on to the next one. You go, no, you don't. There may not be a next one. Just maybe locked in here for 6 years, make the best of it. Be an ambassador for the show.
Yeah.
John, were you an acting coach to both of your kids?
Yeah. Both my kids. One kid started out very young. He was 8, continues to work at the age of 29, and had some. I think his first big film, believe it or not, was In the Jungles with Arnold Schwarzenegger as an 8-year-old down in Mexico. And, yeah,
I love it.
And that's actually, it was 8 years. I think he turned 9 on the set somewhere down in central Mexico. And then my other son was a baseball player and decided, I think the reason he didn't pursue it at first is because his brother was, and he wanted to forge his own path. So he took baseball as far as he could, taking it to the college level, and announced at the age of 21 that he wanted to get into business. And now he's in a series, and I've coached them both, worked with them privately and in class, which is really great. It's really great to be able to do that. And they're good kids. And I think the thing I was able to teach them, guys, was to be humble. As Costas says, be a good guy, behave. Don't be that guy on the set that creates a problem, because you pass people coming up, you pass them going back down again. And one of the things that I'm the most proud of is when I walk on a set that my kids are working on, the people in makeup and hair and wardrobe say, your boys are some of the nicest, most humble kids. And that's important to me, that they treat everybody with respect, and they do. And so, yeah, I've been able to coach him and continue. We're in this self-taping world. I am in right now. If I move this around, I'm in my little self-taping room right here. And my kids come over and shoot their stuff all the time right here with me sitting behind the camera. And so it's great. I coached him in baseball. I thought after that he'd want to get away from me, but no, he can't. Now I'm coaching him in this world and he's fine with it. So it's good. But I had the pleasure of having them both as
to some of our attendees, if they're trying to be still looking for an acting coach, John Posey's got the formula to get people.
I'd call Posey. I'm actually going to call Posey. I'm going to call him.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I'll tell you guys, people came to me and said, would you mind coaching kids? And I thought, well, I coached Pee Wee baseball for years, so I know what that world's like, because you're not just dealing with the kids, you're dealing with parents who may think their kids should be an overnight star and they're not. I had the same problem in baseball. A lot of guys who thought their kids were major league talented and they weren't. But the kids, for the most part, are delightful. And for some reason, it seems to work. I don't know what it is, but me with these kids getting scenes and getting work out of them, it's been kind of a pleasure. I know a lot of acting coaches won't go that level. They'll say, hey, I'm 21 and above. And I've got all these little preteens and teenagers that come to me. And for some reason, I don't know why, but we seem to click and it's fun and it's working out great and I'm enjoying it. Different world. I didn't see this coming, especially when COVID hit and I found myself on 6 or 7 classes. Again, Costas, his group of kids from Australia came to me at a recommendation. And I'm sitting here with 7 or 8 kids between the ages of 8 and 15 every Saturday. And it's just delightful. And I don't know where it came from, but I'm happy to do it. And it's kind of a fun thing. It really is. Educational thing too.
So Costas already said he's going to take some classes with you. So anybody else?
I wish I met him when I was 8.
Me too. And Amy.
But he would have been 10.
Yeah. Or 6. Make that 4. Okay, so let's just start to let's just answer some of those questions. Okay. And Amy, if you don't mind answering the first one from Eric Jones.
What is it? Wait.
As a playwright. Eric Jones, yeah, as a playwright
and a screenwriter. I understand that lit agencies don't accept. Yeah, so because we're WGA, we're not supposed to. We're really legally not allowed to take your script unsolicited. You can send a query letter though, and then if there's interest in, send your log line, and then we can request it if we see that there's interest or we need something like that on our slate of projects.
Cool. Next question is for you, John. How does a spec writer get his project read?
I think it might be easier than just coming out here as an actor where you're hoping somebody might look at a demo reel. If you've got a script, I found it was not hard. There was always somebody who was connected to somebody who said, I can get this to an agent or I can get this to a reader within an agency. It could be somebody that works. You find out, guys, this is the importance of maybe jumping into classes with other writers or actors, is somebody's connected to somebody who's connected to somebody. And I remember when I first wrote this spec, Frederico, I think it was our friend Seth, who said, I want to get this to somebody. They read it, sent it to somebody else. Before I knew what I was repped, and the movie and the script was floating around town. And I didn't know anything from anything. It was merely a spec script. In fact, the one-man show, I had no idea. The night I opened it, they bought it. So you don't know. So when you don't have an agent, it's easier because this spec script can be a calling card. And I think almost any literary agency, unless they tell you otherwise, if you were to query a letter to Amy and say, will you guys read a script, being that Amy has to be that buffer between you and the agency will not. But if Amy's looking for, I don't know what her mandate is, but she may be looking for a certain kind of script and they have the time to read it overnight. Someone would say, hey, I don't know who you are, but I love your voice. Can we meet and talk more about this script? And it's as easy as that. So it's a calling card. And I dare say it's probably an easier calling card than having a headshot, because it's clearly something you create. If somebody's reading it, moves them, and whether it's a reader or an agent, and they're going to get you in the room. So you're floating around Hollywood, you're running into people. Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody that can get this in front of an agent. And there there are a lot of agencies that are actually, actively looking for scripts just to read to see what's out there, because as we know, there's a ton of content needed right now because of all the streaming services. So, that doesn't mean they get made. Look, I have sold or optioned maybe 12 screenplays over my time and have been hired by the studios to write screenplays. And to this day, I've only had one produced. Now, I've made a nice living off selling those. I would rather get them made, but that doesn't mean that I've been hired flat out by Disney, by HBO, by Sony to write screenplays that for whatever reason went sideways. People came and left, new personnel, it just got stuck. And, once they write you a nice paycheck and say, thank you, it's out of your hands. If you've got something to write as a spec script, you'll find a way to get it in the hands of agents. There's a lot of, and by the way, not just agents, guys. If for some reason agents are a little bit of a problem, check out managers. There's managers for writers, just as there are actors who are looking to bring things together and are looking for actors as well as they're looking for content and original material. And there's so many places you could sell your writing right now, whatever that is. So it's not that complicated. To get in front of somebody who could find their way to somebody like Amy, who they're fairly new in the last couple of years at really jumping on board the literary world and going to big guns right now with material. All of a sudden, they're just as busy as they can be literary. And I forgot to mention that Amy has a daughter who I also coached, who just booked a TV series. And so
there you go. Costas, you see what I'm saying?
I told you I'm going to call him. What else can I do?
That class while you can.
I forget. I don't have 2 kids anymore. Since I got married to Amy, we now have 7. So I have to remember the
8.
Okay, so next question is to Amy. As an actor, how do you suggest obtaining representation? Cold emails, etc.?
Emails are fine. If you're going to do an email, again, make sure, especially here if you're in the States, that you're sending a headshot. Send your actor's access link. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Nothing more than a paragraph. Be careful that if you're writing a whole bunch of emails, get the person's name right. Don't write to me and say, hey, Tommy. Make sure that... Make sure you know who you're talking to. And remember this, it's kind of like the script thing too. If on my roster, and every agent is different, so if on my roster I have someone like you, I'm not necessarily going to take everybody's different, right? Everybody has their own thumbprint. I get it. But I won't double or triple up on somebody who's the same type. It's not fair. I don't feel like it's fair. That's just my thing. So you have to have a tough skin. Some agencies are full. Like my roster right now is closed until pilot season's over, until I can kind of revamp my roster. Doesn't mean I don't like you or you're not talented. It just means it's not great timing. So yeah, email. Short, concise, with everything we need in there.
Hey, Tommy.
Precise.
Tommy. Precise.
Tommy. Tommy. Yeah, don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. Do your own.
Yeah.
So, John, Eric Rich sent us a question. When presenting yourself to an agent or manager as a writer-director, do they look for filmmakers with short films they've made or feature films filmmakers are looking to get made?
Yeah, they would look at anything. I mean, for the longest time, some of the up and coming directors came from just shooting music videos. So this is why they have so many film festivals for short films, or why even the Academy would have would have a category for short films. Because if you can tell a story in 5 minutes, they're going to assume, and if you can move them, then you can tell a story, in 60 minutes. So many guys came from the commercial world into the film world. I think Paul Haggis may have been one of them. Some of these great director writers who came from doing short commercials into bigger mainstream thoughtful films. So anything you've got to show them, and it used to be music videos, which was the thing. Then for a while there were guys who would shine in the commercial world. But now, we have an iPhone 12 that you can go out and make an interesting little film. You've got people with talent that you bring into your world, be it a sound or camera or whatever, and you find yourself doing things that people will see. And there's another thing, Frederico, is that nowadays, and I stepped away from writing for a while and got back into acting. When I came back in, I realized that everybody was doing pitch decks, which didn't exist 10 years ago. So it's not enough to sell the script. You also have to create a pitch deck, which is a visual, component of what your script is. So people will look at the pitch deck, which could have, anything from photographs to a little bit of copy to something it's like a picture book of stuff before they might even sit down and read what your script is about. Now, I don't know if that's because people don't have time to read the scripts anymore the way they used to, or whether they would like to see that step first of a pitch deck with the whole backdrop of what your story's about before they decide to delve into page one. But it's a new thing. And so, a 5-minute film could easily turn into sort of a pitch deck for something that you want to expand. Maybe the most famous case of a short film that became a huge franchise was the Saw franchise, the horror film that Evolution Entertainment put together. They found this.
Have you heard about it, Costas?
Costas, these guys were your countrymen, right? Weren't they both Aussies, I think, both of them? And
two young Aussies. But as you said, before you said
your neighbor?
No, I didn't know them. My father drove me in a taxi once and he showed him a picture of me going, that's my son. They came here and 3 years later they became what they became. But it's funny, before you mentioned Saw, please don't lose track of what you're saying because it came to my mind. Please continue, John.
Yeah, where was I? What was I saying? They will, in fact, so that could be your pitch deck, your 5-minute film, your 6-minute film. I have a friend in town who enters every year, believe it or not, there's something called the 48-hour film festival. Scares the hell out of me. From concept to finished product in 48 hours. He actually does it and he wins every year. It's a phenomenal thing to watch. And people take notice and they'll find you. This is how they'll track you down. So you do part of the business of being an actor or writer is create sort of what can you do to create your own stuff. In my day, when I mentioned Chaz Palminteri or Eric Bogosian or Spalding Gray, we didn't have this and we didn't have the technology that we could get for next to nothing. So we created one-man shows that we would go to theaters and hope that they would find us. And in fact, they did. Now it's a little bit easier. I think people are going to the theater less, which is unfortunate, maybe to watch somebody do a solo show. And it's more about what can you do with the cell phone or with a red camera or something that you can create and knock out for $5,000 that will move us and have us to want to be in business with you. So technology is helping young guys who have all these great ideas. Hell, podcasts are becoming, people are selling their podcasts now as features. So there's many ways to get things done. So whether you're writing a spec or whether you shoot a 5-minute movie, there's stuff out there where people will find you and they're out there looking. They have to. A lot of content's required.
Good stuff, guys. Amy, I want to thank you very much for being part of the panel. John, Costas, it's very cool. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys very soon.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Costas,
Thank
nice
you.
to hang with you. I've seen your work, but I haven't met you. It was a pleasure.
Can I tell you something? If with your blessing, I'm going to call you both privately in the next couple of days to say hello.
Excellent.
Oh, that would be nice.
And thank you.
We can have
You know what?
steak and coffee.
If we're still on the air, whatever, I'll just say this. When you talk to people that have come from here and grown and done this, and the kids and coaching and done all the writing and everything, it puts you in touch and says, what we've been doing is not a joke. It's part of a historical phenom that's not that easy. And unfortunately, this live TV stuff tricks people to going, it's easy. It's not easy. Good stuff, good quality. It comes from a craft, and it almost sounds cliche, the craft, but you know what? Hollywood was built on craft and talent and balls and guts and failures and falling and getting up. And when I talk to people like you, it reminds me of how I began and what I learned then from the people before us, So it's a real pleasure to have gone through this because it's not my forte, but I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Kind of brings you back.
thank you. Yeah, you bet.
Guys,
Is anybody listening outside of us now?
everybody.
Everybody. I'm not going to ask you where you are. I'll find you through Frederico. Please accept my call.
I'll connect you guys. And my director is asking for us to do a print photo with all the people that are watching that attend the seminar. So, Rafael, go for it and include your photo also on the. There you go.
Hello, guys.
Hi,
I will send for everyone an invite to come here on camera. We can take a virtual picture.
Can you take it?
Yes. Just all the people, you need to accept the invite.
We got everybody. Oh, wait.
I don't see anybody.
They need to accept the invite.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to get everyone here, but yeah, they need to accept. One second, guys. Okay.
I feel like I just met a lot of people.
This is so interesting to watch this.
Okay, sorry, I needed to go like one by one. Technology. Okay, let's see if we have everyone here. Yes. Okay. If everyone can be happy, and we will take the screenshot right now, okay?
Ready?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Okay. I took it a lot. Thank you, guys.
All right.
All right, thanks, you guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Frederico.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
See you again.
I'll put you guys in contact.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to put Costas' number on our website. If anybody wants to contact him.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks.
How you
Great.
guys?
Thanks.
Bye.